how about we start this today through an acknowledgement, right? And then I'll come back in and introduce the ways in which it goes. And so for me, you can see this picture here, right? And this is the mouth of the lake and the lake back to the escarpment at a particular period of time. And so for me, you know, we're speaking about the lake today. And it's interesting because country at times can conjure up this idea of like physical land, you know, like land country. And at times for me, what we refuse or we sort of can't find ourselves able to engage with, you know, there's a sort of mental divide. We forget that like water country and sky country and the landscapes in between, that's all country and requires acknowledging, right? And so for us, you know, one of the beautiful things about the projects that we've undertaken is that we are focusing on the lake, you know, the Lake Illawarra. And in that space that we're going to be playing, we are actually engaging with the knowledges of this lake. So when we're acknowledging country, we're acknowledging the knowledges that are situated in place. And so for me, it's even just having a moment to see a picture like this that allows you to imagine back into a time and a space where there's less impact from the built environment, where there's less people, where the knowledges are able to present themselves in a different way. And so for us as blackfellas, you know, when we think about our place, we're thinking about it consistently in terms of its past, present, and future. See, this is part of the acknowledgement that these knowledges that live are consistent and continual, and they're also simultaneous. And so before we start today, we just want to acknowledge this one here, this old lake, you know, because that's the focus of our yarns today. And we understand that the knowledges that come from this place actually make us more human as people. All right, that's the ways in which we're going to acknowledge today. I hope that's made some sense to you, crew. And I'm just going to bring us back in and then introduce our crew that's going to be sharing with you today, right? So you remember, for those of you that were here last week, we was talking about the Blue Futures and that motley crew. We said, you know, like they're good looking people, but they're smart too. If you weren't here, there's this project going on at the moment. It's the result of these global challenges grants, right? And we've got this Blue Futures team, and I don't want to go into it too much today because we're going to focus on one of the projects that's come through it, but I am just setting the scene quickly, right? So Blue Futures, motley, but good looking crew, right? And then beneath that, you've got these three streams, all right? And one of those streams is called governing and guiding, yeah? Grumpy, good looking, and really intelligent too, right? And these guys are running a couple of projects, and their projects are focused around the lake. So they've become a bit like case studies per se, right? And one of these projects is the one that we want to share with you today. Moolawang Ngayagang Yanba, come to the mouth of the lake with me. So what I'm going to do is, like I always try to do, but somehow don't get it very good all the time. I'm pretty bad, I fail, but I don't want to talk too much, right? So what I want to do is introduce our team that's going to be sharing today. And remember, as I was saying, like we're following an Aboriginal way, yeah? And so our introductions are always based on what's your name and where you're from. And then the other question I'm going to ask these mob today is, how are you in relationship with Moolawang, right? How are you related to this particular space, this project, right? So firstly, I'm gonna shoot over to Michelle Voya. Michelle, what's your name, where you're from, and how do you relate to Moolawang?
Thanks, Jade. Michelle Voya. I'm originally from the Hunter, grew up in the Hunter, but now live in Kiama. And I guess I'm the chief grumpy one, am I? The head of the governing and guiding stream.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you so much, Michelle. Kathy Howlett. Hey, what's your name, where you're from, and how are you in relationship with the project?
Okay, thanks, Jade. Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy Howlett. I'm from, I live in Wollongong country, up Lismore way at the moment, but I am from the Hunter, like Michelle. We share lake synergies. And what was the last bit, Jade, again?
Just how you related to the Moolawang project.
Okay, so at the moment, I've come to the project with some Norwegian funding because Sami people are interested in how we do what we're doing in Wollongong, incorporate Aboriginal decision knowledge and values into the process of decision making. And yeah, they've given me some funding which I've brought to this project. So yeah, hoping to form relationships with Sami people around bringing Aboriginal knowledge to environmental decision making. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kathy. And now across to Kath Moyles. Sis, what's your name, where you're from, how you related to Moolawang?
Name's Catherine Moyle, not Moyles, Jade, but anyway, it's just an
like Moyles
joke.
and
I know. So Kath Moyle, I'm where I'm from. So I'm from west of the Great Dividing Range originally and moved around there, but very much feeling a sense of connection to this place where I've been for a while. Right now, where I'm from, I'm sitting over on the Innovation Campus and I'm looking out a window and I can see Jembla up there, and I know that Jira's just down the end of the hallway. My connection is I'm research assistant and I'm also a board member of the Aboriginal Land Council.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Catherine Moyle. Okay, now over to Randa. Randa, what's your name? Where you from? And how do you relate to Moolawang?
Hi everyone, I'm Randa Sassadon. At the moment I live here in Illawarra in beautiful Cordo Heights and I'm loving it. This picture behind me is taken over at Illawarra treetops. And if you look into the far distance, you can see the lake. I am PhD candidate at ANCORS. My PhD is Ocean Stories for Ocean Governance. And I come to Moolawang Ngayagang Yanba as a researcher. I have a really keen interest in the connections between stories, knowledge, and governance, particularly the potential of stories to work as knowledge carriers and as agents to direct and illuminate different perspectives and worldviews across and between different social worlds. So that's me.
Beautiful. Thank you, Randa. And definitely not last or not least, Gemma, sis, what's the name, where you from, and how do you relate to Moolawang?
Thanks, Jade. Hi, everyone. I'm Gemma. I'm from Sydney, live in Sydney, very much a cliche Sydney sider on that front. And I am a PhD candidate at the University of Sydney, but I'm also lucky enough to be a research assistant on this project.
Thank you, Jim. And for those of you who don't know, I'm Jade Kennedy, and I'm from the Illawarra, South Coast sort of regions. And for me, I get to be the grumpiest one within the team. I at times don't really know what I'm doing. So I've, had to build relationship with these guys to help me understand the ways in which we can do these things. But I also have the privilege of being able to share some of the knowledges from this country that can influence the ways in which we can impact upon environmental-based decision-making and where these values relationships sit. So I want to just give a little background from where this stuff sort of come from, yeah? And I just found myself then, like, you've just got to excuse me. I have to always put this little tagline is, I might swear, I don't mean to, it just comes out, and I don't mean offense. So please don't take it in that way. But if I have to think too hard, I forget what I'm going to say, right? So we're here today to talk about Moolawang, and we're here to talk about the way in which we want to engage a program around the lake and the decisions that are made around that lake, and the ways in which those decisions translate to the environmental sustainability, the health and well-being of that place, but also beyond that in some ways. See, this here yarn started through this committee that sort of related to, estuaries and the lake and other things, and it's made up of council people and government people, and, they sit in this space and they have to contend with environmental values and community values and the ways in which they try to look at the health and well-being of this space for a community. And so we started to consider the ways in which these guys are doing this. And at the same time, as I was trying to frame for you guys, is there's this blue futures thing. this collective of researchers and workers of different, shapes, sizes and forms that have committed themselves to looking at the ways in which Aboriginal knowledges and perspectives can inform their research around, say, ocean governance, but also, the relationship between waters and countries and space and place. Yeah, and what happens is that I got dragged in. I'm part of this motley crew, this grumpy but good-looking motley crew. And so for me, my contribution gets to be the fact that for a few years now, I've been playing in this space at the University of Wollongong. I don't know if you fellas heard about it. You don't have to, but there's a pretty cool website, right? And it's called Jindaola. And Jindaola's just by absolute chance had some awesome success in the ways in which it's been able to engage teaching academics in shifting their curriculums to build knowledge-based relationships between their disciplinary knowledges and the relevant Aboriginal knowledges. And there's a program to this. It's an 18-month program, like it's heavy as shit, right? Because there's lots of engagement, there's a consistency. And then there's also engagement with Aboriginal community and country. And, this thing can go on. And I'm not here necessarily to talk about that, but the acknowledgement we need to give is there's a number of underpinning principles or values and customs that we follow within this space that are translating and absolutely pivotal to the ways in which we understand Moolawang and the ways in which Moolawang can have an impact in this environmental values decision-making space. And so I want to share with you these 6 R's, right? So they sit within Jindaola, but they are also going to inform Moolawang, right? So we talk about respect, responsibility, and reciprocity. So these values have a particular way of articulating themselves depending on the context. But I'll say it like this, from a blackfella perspective, respect, responsibility, and reciprocity are all doing words. Right? There's things we got to do. In the same vein, we have regularity, routine, and relevance. These are the customs. Now, they are doing words, but they also sit embedded within philosophy. Now, the philosophy that sits within this space, we call maramal. And maramal is one hand or 5 fingers. And I started to speak briefly to these the other week. We're talking about country, kinship, culture, journey, and connectedness. So these concepts, these philosophies, these values, these principles, these customs, these ways of being are being sort of practiced and exchanged within the university context of teaching and learning. And so we come in and we play this little motley crew of Blue Futures, and we're doing these other things across the different streams, right? And now we get to this governing and guiding space, and we want to start to really address how are environmental-based decisions made? Where is the place of values? How do we articulate these values? What's tangible and what's intangible, and how are they accounted for, or how are we in relationship with these? And so we start to talk, and we start to walk, and we start to sit and engage. By lake, like heaps, like there's an agency there, right? From an Aboriginal place. The lake is a sovereign being and an interconnected set of relationships, see? It all comes through and off. And so what we start to do is go, you know what? We've been doing this in this teaching learning space. What does it mean in the decision-making space? Well, for blackfellas, it makes absolute sense, right? Because when we say the word business, we're actually saying decision-making. We're on a lifelong journey of learning, philosophically, but also practically, right? As a people, this is our understanding. But we also have a deep understanding that we are the accumulations of decisions that we have made throughout our life. To this point in time, I'm every decision that I made. So when the blackfella talks about business, we're talking about decision making. And so it correlates and it translates. And what we started to identify was that these guys that have to make decisions on behalf of communities, and they try really hard to do the consultations and the engagements and be respectful to the roles that they're in, man, their job's asked. Like they're sitting in this like situation where they can hardly win. You know, they're doing their absolute best all the time to be representatives of their communities or their roles and be responsible and all this shit. But they still, at the end of all of the things that they go through their engagements and consultations and, you know, research and activities, just can't seem to please everybody's. And sometimes they're not even able to make a decision that may not be realized nor recognized, but in the best interest of the lake, as a sovereign, as an entity, as a series of interconnected relationships. And sometimes these decisions are made unknowingly, right? And so we're not going to just sit here and say, oh, you know what, we're just going to draw on all these Aborigine shit. You know that, you know, what do they call it? Traditional ecological knowledge and stuff. That's not what this is. This is about decision making. And this is about the ways in which Aboriginal approaches to understanding country can allow us as non-Aboriginal decision makers to identify with our relationships with country, our relationships with the lake, and then thereafter how we can account for those from a values place, but from an interpersonal, interrelated and interconnected place. So I reckon that's enough for me. I talk too much shit anyway. And so what I'm going to do now, right, is I'm going to shoot over to the team and I'm going to ask these guys to start sharing the ways in which they're building relationships, engaging with all of these things. But a quick summary, right? You've got 6 R's: respect, responsibility, reciprocity, yeah, regularity, routine, relevance. And then you've got Maramal, you've got country, kinship, culture, journey, and connectedness. And these are going to play out through a particular program, right? And we'll go into that a little bit more, sort of walk through and get an understanding of what the rest of the team's contributing and how this is coming together as a space and place where we're asking you to come and sit with us at the mouth of the lake. So I'm going to shoot over firstly to Michelle Voyer. Michelle, are you able to share, please, the ways in which you're contributing to this?
While I'll just make a couple of comments on what Jade's just talked about. So ideally we would have been telling you about the results of this program now, because we would have been just about done, but COVID got in the way. So instead we're talking about what we will be doing next year. So we have a whole bunch of people signed up to take part in this project. And us as the researchers will be part of it too. We're not sitting outside the process looking in and taking notes on what's happening to the participants. We're going through the journey as well. And so that's a really important point to make, that we'll be kind of observing our own responses as non-Aboriginal researchers to the program and how it impacts on our own research and our own thoughts about decision making. So to me, the decision-making process is something that I've been interested in for quite a long time. It's I did have a background in government and then did my PhD, and have constantly been kind of interested in this idea of how do we take account for some of those intangible social and cultural values that often get pushed outside of decision-making processes. So we try to rationalise our decision-making processes as much as we can and remove emotion, remove ideas of spirituality, remove ideas of subjectivity, because they kind of make it really messy and non-objective. But of course, they, as I mentioned last week, for those who are here, they always find their way back in. And as Jade said, it always results in reactions in politics, in community responses that can be unpredictable and messy. So I've been interested for some time in how we take better account of those kind of questions or those kind of values. And so when I came into this project, I don't have a background in working necessarily with Aboriginal knowledges. I've worked with Aboriginal communities in my research, but never in this kind of way where it's really leading and taking such a leadership role before. So it's been quite a journey for me personally. But as I came into this project, the things that were occupying my thoughts were, how do we actually start to rethink the way we do business, how we do decision-making, how we do environmental governance, because we're all seeing the impacts of a process that's not necessarily working that well. So for me, this idea of reflexivity was really interesting to me, of taking a step back and having a look at what assumptions we're taking into our governing processes and our decision-making processes. What are the unspoken values and norms that are sitting underneath our decision-making processes that may be creating this path dependency of, you know, a predetermined outcome just because we've taken a particular, we've built in particular assumptions into our processes. So this idea of reflexivity was really interesting to me, but it was very intangible. It was hard to kind of think about how you practically apply this in a decision-making process. And I guess that's why I was so excited about engaging with Jade in this project. This is why I was, this to me provides a pathway through which we can start to have these conversations around intangible values and around underlying social and cultural values that will influence our decision-making processes, and kind of removing this myth that all our decision-making processes are impartial and objective, because they in practice they never really are. And the focus on relational aspects of governance is something that is really exciting for me in this taking an Aboriginal approach and in taking an approach that's led by an Aboriginal way. So that's to me what I'm interested in. That's my core question. How can Aboriginal ways of knowing inspire, inform and direct a new normal in how we govern ocean spaces? Thanks, Joe.
No, beautiful, Michelle. It's the significance of relationships as opposed to that objectivity, right? So that's beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm now going to go across to Kathy Howlett. Kathy, you there?
I'm here, mate. I'm here. And Gemma.
Beautiful.
Right.
Are you able to share with us your contributions and role to the project of Moolawang?
Absolutely. So I have been offered this wonderful opportunity to work with this mob down here, and it's all serendipitous how it came to be. It's a lovely story, but I feel like I've landed in the right place, and it's a wonderful project we're involved in. I currently work up at Guinevere, the Indigenous unit at Southern Cross University, and I manage the higher degree research program up there at the moment. So I've been working in this space of Indigenous knowledges, and I used to work for quite a long time in the environmental science arena with a good friend of mine, Monica. G'day, Monica. I can see it out there in Zoom land. And we were always working in this really contested space of teaching environmental studies and working in the Indigenous knowledge space and trying to bring those two things together. And it never quite worked. It was really clunky. We were involved in all sorts of programs. But the Indigenous Aboriginal knowledge space, I'm going to call it. I don't particularly like the word Indigenous, so I'm going to go with what I like. And it was just this, how do we incorporate, you know, the insights and the knowledge and values from Aboriginal knowledge into environmental decision making? And it was just, it didn't happen. You know, it was either treated as just traditional ecological knowledge, or, you know, a green stamp of sustainability if you included the blackfella. So that's my background in why I'm so excited to be involved in this particular project. I have been very, very lucky to have worked with Sami colleagues in Norway. And I've been doing that for the last 5 years at the University of Tromsø, which is in the Arctic Circle. So I've put up there for you a little view of the Northern Lights because it's on lots of people's bucket lists. I get to go up there and have relationships with the Sami people and my Sami friends and colleagues and work in amazing projects up there. And my story of how I came to work with Michelle and Kath and Jade and Gemma and Randa and everyone else involved in this Moolawang project was we wrote a grant for this, and it's called Indigenous Knowledge Systems Planning and Environmental Decision Making. So you can see the synergies here, right? This is the Norwegian project. Wrote a grant application with a colleague from Sydney University at the time with our Sami colleagues at Tromso, and it was successful. And so we got, yay, great, we've got the research funding. We had to find something in Australia that would talk to this. You know, how do Indigenous knowledges, Aboriginal knowledges inform decision-making in the environmental sphere and the social sphere, all the spheres, let's, you know, not silo it all. How can we do this in a genuine, authentic, not making it tokenism? How can we do this? And then we found Michelle and Kath, and it was, yeah, let's head on down to Wollongong, to the lake, let's have a look. And we brought some funding down to the project, Moolawang. So at the moment, I'm a research assistant, a research person on this project. I'm loving it. It's just, I don't want to sound too excited, but I am really excited because for the first time in my very long research career, I feel like I've got to a place where this is going to make a difference. This is just so important and so amazing. But for me as well, I can take this back. I'm building a set of relational knowledges with the Sami people. This is a gift that I can take back to Norway, and that the Sami friends and colleagues of mine, you know, can incorporate up there, because everybody's making decisions in the marine governance space, particularly Norway, because there's so many fjords and so much ocean, and they've got lots of conflicts around the oil and everything. So they're really, really interested. So they are as excited about my involvement in this project as I hope you can see I am. And yeah, I mean, we all tend to talk up and, you know, I'm really excited about this project, but, and the lights just lost it in here, I am really excited about this project. It is going to make such a difference around, you know, working with the decision makers at the coalface and doing that beautiful stuff I was talking to us all about before. It's just, it's cutting edge. And yeah, so I'm hoping to take back this wonderful, these ideas and outcomes, if we want to call it that, from this project back to Norway and see if it can land on the ground up there. So yeah, I feel really privileged in all sorts of ways to be a part of it. And this is a really good, strong research team, and I can't say how much I love being part of it. So over to you, Jade. Thank you very much.
No, thank you so much, Kath, and thank you for your authenticity and your sharing in that space. It's beautiful for us to be able to have a relationship through you to other Indigenous peoples of another place. And all of these things find their space of translation and relation. So this is a real privilege for us, actually. And it's a beautiful way for us to be able to share that relationship more openly too today. So thank you, Kathy. And now I'm going to shoot over to Catherine Moyle. Kath, can you please
Jade, they need to be
share
able
with
to
us?
find my portfolio, you know, so in case it was
you right, my sis.
for parties and weddings and things like that. Anyway.
Well, we'll get you in. Can you please share the ways in which you're contributing in?
So my chief contribution is comedic relief. No, like seriously though. So my background is I've crossed different realms in terms of working in government and research, and as an active member of the Aboriginal community. So the perspective that I'll bring, that's I guess different to the rest or to most of the team, is around that last one really. And for me, really, it's about, if you want something you haven't got, you need to do something you haven't done. And so the uniqueness of this as an approach, and knowing like I know some of you out there, and knowing how difficult it is, and having sat in your spaces and things like that, as Jade said, you know, you're busting your gut, you're doing what you can to make sure that you're consulting and engaging, but knowing at the same time that there's something sort of that's off around decision-making processes, and knowing where it just catches, you know, where you're not comfortable in some way, and that's that conflict in terms of values. As an Aboriginal person, it seems like an awful lot, you know, like we're positioned in coming in late in the process. So my analogy, I love analogies for those that know me, if you don't, get used to it. Anyway, so my analogy is, right, I've got 4 kids and I show up at home, and let's just say that my partner has told them that they're allowed to have ice cream for dinner. And they're so excited, and I show up and I'm going, but wait a minute, you haven't had veggies today, but you had ice cream yesterday, you know, and raising all of these questions. But by then the appetite's there and the excitement around something. And so often it seems that Aboriginal community and organisations like Land Council, we come in late in the piece, you know, and other groups as well will do the same thing. And you're pushing against something instead of collaborating and co-designing something in the beginning, which is very much sort of around where our cultural values actually are, the win-win, you know. So rather than this idea of trying to retrofit information and knowledge in, this approach is really, it's the approach or the way, you know, it's the way that we all, Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal, come to understand our relationships with each other and with place. As Michelle said, and as Jade has said, you know, that we've all got these relationships, and the catching comes when we don't sort of honour them in different ways. And particularly if you're in government, for example, or you've signed up for a certain contract or whatever it is, then you know that there are certain outcomes that you need to approach and sort of ways that, or expectations around that. So for me, this is really a beautiful opportunity to focus not just on place, but to honour your own relationship with yourself and with place, and build some really strong relationships as well. I think that's one of the spin-offs from this whole thing, is around the strengthened relationships within governance groups. So whilst this is a mock governance group, you know, anyone that's sat on any governance group will know that there's always conflict. You know, there's always conflict. But my experience growing up with these values, and my experience from spending time with Jade and the Jindaola team, and even just the start of Moolawang, is that conflict, you know, like sort of disappears, or it lessens, and it sort of starts to fade as we find the same, and we start from that place where there's the shared values. And so that's really, for me, the really exciting part is around that, like doing something that's different to get something that we haven't got. And there's an appetite and a recognition of that within society more broadly. Like we look after bushfire, for instance, like the bushfires, and this interest in cultural burning, you know, this, let's come back to Aboriginal ways, but this is an Aboriginal way, like proper noun, you know, like W-A-Y, like capital W, as opposed to just a verb. Yeah. So that's me.
Beautiful. Thank you, Catherine. And what all of you guys will learn as you get to know Kath more is that she can use the analogy of ice cream in any situation. But what's really beautiful for me that's come through is the way in which you've been able to articulate the ways in which we are approaching this from a strengths base. Aboriginal Australia, our knowledges and perspectives are, as Catherine has presented, sometimes an afterthought, something we might cram in, something that's helpful for a research project, or it could even just be the flavour of the month. And what we've got here, as Catherine is articulating, a situation where we're asking you to come for a walk with us, to sit with us, to look and see how we see, and start to realise that you're looking just like me. As you look past the trees across the lake, you see them mangroves there, or you see them fellas on the sailing boats, or whatever the perspective from where it is that you sit, this is actually the ways in which we are approaching this. There's strength in this. It's grounded, it's situated, it's collaborative, it's co-designed, it's a relationship. So thanks for that, Kath. Now I'm going to shoot over to you, Randa, please. Are you able to share with us your contributions and your role within Moolawang, please?
Sure. I'm just going to bring up some slides. Can we see that? Yeah.
Not yet.
Okay. All right. So now I can't see you guys. Hold on.
I can't see, can others see the slide? I can't see your slides yet, Randa. Do
Can you see them?
you
No.
try and share again, please?
Okay. Oh dear. Just need to refine my Zoom window.
This is why I don't do slides, because I don't trust them. Technology.
Like ice cream, right?
I like ice cream, yeah.
Mm.
Oh, here we are. Let me try again. So share screen, desktop 2. And I have to press the share button.
Wait,
Okay,
yes.
I'm sharing.
Beautiful. Thank you, Randa.
All right, sorry for the delay. In answering Jade's question, what I'm going to do is simultaneously play you a photo slideshow that tells a story about the lake, whilst also telling you a story that might initially seem quite unrelated. And that's because, as you know, I like stories. So here we go. Once upon a time, I was a shipping lawyer working on the 32nd floor in a shiny glass building on Park Street in the Sydney CBD. I wore fancy suits and uncomfortable shoes. It felt like I was walking beside my life purpose, but not quite on my life path. Anyway, in this job, I often had to go along to networking events, and I found these networking events so socially awkward. Most of the people attending already seemed to know each other and had a different and higher level experience than I had. So I had no idea who I should talk to or what I should say. But once I finally could find someone who was willing to talk to me, I would just latch onto them for the rest of the event. In this program, Moolawang Ngayagang Yanba, which is based on Jindaola that you've heard about, every time we meet, Jade asks us the question, what's your name? Where are you from? And that question is not just answered one time. It is asked repeatedly. And every time you search aspects of your life story that explain your name and where you've come from. Each time you can give a different answer, but all those answers are true. And what this highlights for me is that each of us have come to this point in time, to this place, by a different path, by a different journey, but each of those journeys are valid and true. And what this does is that it makes the people in the room visible. They are visible to me. I can connect to them. They're not just impenetrable suits shielded behind the facade of a job that they do. They are people who I can see and who can also see me. So when it comes to Lake Illawarra, and we're asking this question, what's your name? Where are you from? The lake also becomes visible to us. And that is the feeling that I have had since embarking in the creation process of this project with this amazing team. These photos that you have seen are snapshot moments of the beginnings of my relationship with the lake. I can start to see that the lake is an entity embedded in an ancient landscape, and that it is part of a millennial-long story of which we are a part. So what am I excited about? I am excited to meet all of the participants at the lake. And I'm really excited about the stories we will be sharing and the story that we will come up with together as we begin to discover what role it is that we have to play in the story of the lake. Thank you.
Thank you, Ren. So beautiful, and thank you for raising for us the significance of story, the ways in which we are all engaging and walking upon the storyline that passes the lake, that moves around the lake. I'm hoping and sort of feeling and sensing that all of us here today, you know, in this way, can understand that we too have a story with the lake, and it's just beautiful the way in which Randa just speaks so poetically to that relationship and that story space. So thank you so much, Randa, for bringing that in for us today. Now I'm going to shoot across to you, Gemma. Shoot the same, what's your contributions and
unpoetic following Randa, but I'll give it. So I'm one of the research assistants on the project, but I'm also undertaking my PhD at the University of Sydney. And I feel incredibly privileged to be able to participate in this project and this program as sort of one of the case studies for my thesis. My research looks into experiences and articulations of environmental justice in Australia. And so what that sort of largely involved has been looking into how communities are responding to situations of environmental injustice. So the sort of best example of that is the Narrabri gas project, which I've been doing some work around, and how as sort of environmental justice theorists, I apologize, I say the words environmental justice just so many times, but how as theorists we can sort of build our understandings of environmental justice out of the actual experiences of communities on the ground, as opposed to taking a sort of top-down research-based approach. So I'm really interested in that lens of how communities are responding to those sorts of situations. And from a procedural standpoint, access to decision-making systems is a sort of fundamental aspect of just process. And this program is a perfect example of an avenue towards elevating voices and values that can often go overlooked within our sort of existing structures by shifting our relationships to place and to our environment. This program has the real capacity to challenge how knowledge is received in decision-making systems, and indeed sort of whose knowledge is heard and valued. And this has really significant ramifications in terms of working towards just resource management. As a participant in the program, I'm also someone who has very little relationship with the lake. I'm from Sydney. I haven't spent a lot of time at the lake. I only really started visiting for the first time when I became involved in this project, thanks to Kathy. Again, I just feel incredibly privileged to have had that avenue in. And so, yeah, that makes me very much a student in this space and in these conversations that we're going to be having. But what I'm really excited about is to find out how all of our sort of different perspectives and relationships contribute to the discussions and to that overall journey that we're going to go on through this program. So in terms of what excites me about the project, everything that I've talked about, everything that everyone has spoken about today is hugely exciting. And yeah, again, it's just such an incredible privilege as a PhD candidate in particular to be involved in something of this magnitude and this significance, and to be involved in a research team like this. PhD projects can be pretty isolating. And yeah, personally, I've just, ever since I joined this team, there's been none of that. But I guess more selfishly, if I'm allowed, I'm also really excited to be approaching this question of Australian environmental justice from the sort of front end, I guess. A lot of the research that I've been doing over the last few years has been sort of more reactionary. It's about how communities are responding to impacts or injustices being inflicted upon them and what we can do to sort of stop or mitigate those experiences. Whereas this program offers, I guess, the other end of that spectrum, right? An intervention into an existing process rather than a response. And so from a selfish sort of research perspective, that's just a really exciting place to be operating from.
That's beautiful, Jem. Thank you so much. What you bring to mind for me and remind us all of is the relationality of the knowledges that not only exist within this space, but across all of our landscapes, which are, in Australia, a cultural interface. That is a network of a whole bunch of shit. But what you're bringing to mind is the positionality and the situatedness of those knowledges and how they are actually impacting and influencing not only our decisions, but the ways in which we are as a society being in relationship with these things. It's beautiful. She's actually the lead on this project. So what I want to just sort of bring to you now, which I didn't want to bring in before, is what's the fucking project? Like, what's the program? What does it really look like? But you need to hear from these guys. So it's not just like, here's a table and some things we do on Mondays and Wednesdays, right? So I'm saying to you guys, we've got this thing called Jindaola over at the university. And it runs for 18 months, man, and it's intense, you know, it's really intense. And we tell everyone that it's about changing curriculum, but that's a lie. It's really about trying to transform people and their relationships to knowledge and the way in which knowledge is allowed to, in its own right, engage us as people of a particular place in the relationships that are more in that reciprocity state with our place. And so what we realize is that people are really, you know, important and busy sometimes. And so we thought, you know what, we can't go out into the general public with all these people in relation and go, hey man, you got 18 months to hang out with me and this crew, and like we'll do all these other things like we normally do, right? Because universities are really privileged and unique spaces. You know, people get time to think, get time to practice and teach. And sometimes the people that are in really significant roles and making decisions on behalf of the lake, behalf of at times, right? They don't have 18 months and all that. So what we've noticed, and COVID's also been a little bit of a helping hand in this, is that we did learn that there are ways in which we can bring Aboriginal knowledges and perspectives into this online space. And so we've constructed a 12-week sort of course with this sort of thing that sort of happens a little bit after. Of course, we're talking to me, right? And the rest of our team, like we don't let you have to hook that easily, but you got 12 weeks where you get to engage in the concepts that sit within Marama. There are lens each, so country, right? So how do we understand the lake in terms of its physicality? Kinship, how does the individual participant engage interpersonally with the lake? Culture, how does the individual participant start to engage with the knowledges that we're sharing across these 12 weeks, right? Each time, and using Aboriginal pedagogies, right? Calls, responses, artifact creation, asking our participants to engage with Aboriginal ways of learning, Aboriginal ways of knowing, using our lenses to build relationships with. I'm not talking about the actual particular packages of content. I'm asking people to reflect on their own experiences, be they as small or little as someone like Gemma's, or someone as deep as mine or whoever's. I don't know, there might be someone out there who was born on the lake, but you know what I'm saying? It's not that, I said to you before, it's not a competition. It's the authenticity and the honesty through which you can relate to the concepts that connect us to, from an Aboriginal place, a significant relationship that allows me to be able to identify as in relationship with. So we talk about our behavioral relationships, and then we talk about the journey. And journey is this, you know, history, story, time, lived experiences, rememberings that are not only just mine. Some of those are held within place. Some of those are held within the yarns of our towns. We looked earlier at a picture graph there, and there's no Wingdang Bridge. Now, I wasn't around, but I got yarns in my family from when they talk about going the other way around. It's these relationships that are going to help us in the ways in which we can understand the significance of, the values within, the relationship between what is tangible and intangible, and then thereafter construct spaces of safety and collaboration to make decisions, not necessarily on behalf of, but with. Anyway, like I always say, I talk too much shit. So now what we're going to do is take a little bit of time to engage in some questions and answers and find ways in which we can elaborate more for you guys. If there's particular questions you have, this is the moment and the opportunity. What we will do, like I said, if you're not confident to speak openly, just throw something in the chat and Freya will bring that up for us, and we'll moderate that for you. If you do want to just ask your question, maybe use the hand up function or make yourself known, and just let us know who you know like to engage with in that question, and we can facilitate that. But this is a moment for us now to start to yarn through some of the things that might have come through our sharings today and the conversation we're having with each other. We open now to have with you. So be brave. Be brave and ask a question, somebody.
Jade, I'll just jump in there. I know that we've got a few of our signed up participants in the audience, and I don't want to put them on the spot, but it would be wonderful to hear from
Put them on the spot. Where are they hiding?
If they were willing to speak up and say why they signed up, what they were interested in from getting out of the program, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Now, who's here from the program? We'll find us.
I'll speak up.
Oh.
Hi everyone, I'm Jess. I'm from Wollongong Council. I'm currently acting in the Environment Project Officer role for Lake Illawarra. So my job at the moment is to oversee the implementation of the Lake Illawarra CMP, and I'm signed up for this program, and I was really disappointed that COVID got in the way of us doing this when we were supposed to, but I'm looking forward to commencing it again. So I think the main thing that I'm really interested in is just learning how we can better incorporate Indigenous knowledge into our coastal management programs, and how we can engage with everyone on a deeper level to understand their needs and the feelings behind their needs and how they connect to the lake. Because I think our CMP, it's really focused on environmental values, but it's also really focused on community values and the social aspect of it. So it'll be great to understand on a deeper level why people want the things that they want, and how we can maybe deliver that without compromising the environment as well. So looking forward to spending some time with you guys.
Yeah, looking forward to spending time with you too, Jess. That's beautiful. Do you work with a team, or is it just sort of you that's holding this space around your coastal management plan, Jess?
Oh no, I work across many teams in council. So I think we've got 39 actions in the CMP. So I kind of annoy a lot of people in Wollongong and Shell Harbour Council. So we do have a project management team. So I have a group of people that help make decisions, and yeah, then I just go out and make sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing.
You are a fantastic participant for a program like this. Just out of personal curiosity, Jess, would you know where the imaginary line is in the lake between Wollongong and Shell Harbour City Council? Just if you could indulge me, please.
Yeah, so it kind of goes, well, through the two entrance training walls, and then to the tip of the big island.
Bevans.
Yeah, I think that's the one. I'll get a map up.
Yeah.
And then it goes, Kadri Island to the northern.
Oh, yes, sorry.
And then it goes across to the northern tip of Macquarie Rivulet.
Okay.
And then it follows Macquarie Rivulet. So that's
there you go, everybody.
That's the imaginary line.
Thank you so much.
I did entertain ideas of meeting some friends from Shell Harbour during the lockdown on one of the sandbars in the middle of the lake, just so that we could see each other and still be in our LGAs, but couldn't get the tides right.
Oh, there you go. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. That's beautiful. Really appreciate it, Jess.
Dave, we just have a question from Andrew about whether there's still expressions of interest are available for the program, whether that's still open to people.
Andrew, well, like, are we interviewing him now, or?
Hey, Jade.
How are you, my brother?
Yeah, I'm well. Yeah, look, I haven't put an EOI in. Look, I have an interest, and I know that there's probably others within my team, within my agency at DPI. So I work with DPI, which you know, others may not.
Could you just expand on that so that others do know, please?
Yeah, so I work
Appreciate
with
that.
yeah. So if you don't know who DPI is, look, a lot of you probably do. So the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment. I work, and the members in our team work within EES, Environment, Energy and Science, within a particular team. Our particular team supports local government, so people like Jess and others who are in the call today prepare coastal management programs. So I guess, yeah, that's our role. We provide a support role to, and that's a statewide support role. So yeah, look, there's probably, yeah, so there's probably, look, I have an interest, but there's probably others from other regions who may be interested in participating if there's still that opportunity. So I guess that's where the question comes from.
Yeah, no, and I really appreciate you just sharing and, you know, just educating all of us as well at times around the ways in which these spaces are governed. That's really important. And here's some of the people, you know, and this is from an Aboriginal perspective, what we're wanting to do is, you know, we're in relationship and we're in relationship with decisions that are being made, and these are the avenues through. I don't know, girls, like Andrew's a bit of a rowdy bloke, but I'd be willing to have him join the journey. And, you know, I think it is about the ways in which we start to consider those that the participants are also working with, so that they've also got those support mechanisms back in the spaces and places that they're inhabiting when these decisions are relevant as well, right? So one thing I will mention though is there is a significance around being place-based. So our knowledges are place-based from an Aboriginal perspective, and we want to be able to generate a collaboration around those understandings. And so what we would need to negotiate in the ways in which Andrew is presenting, you know, his willingness and his team's willingness is what would the relationship be between some of these other individuals within DPI and these particular teams if they are not physically placed here. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're disqualified. It's what is the relationship? What is the knowledge relationship? Will these individuals benefit from these learnings, and how will they translate? So just to qualify, they may all be eligible, or there may be situations that may not, but that comes through the ways in which the knowledges that they will be learning and engaging with through the program translate and relate to the places in which they will be making decisions, if that makes sense.
Can I jump in, Jane?
Of course, sorry.
No, it's okay. The other thing is that, so yeah, the other thing, like part of our focus has been on not stacking like the group with too many from any single agency. So, but what we are looking at is the way that it can be used in different places. So with industry and stakeholders, for instance. So there's more in the pipeline around the ways that this program can actually be implemented in a place-based sort of a way. Andrew's got my vote if we're voting him in, but anyway, he's got my vote. But we'll probably just take you, Andrew, at this point in time.
I've just sent Andrew Gemma's details.
Okay. Yeah. But so it's definitely a space though to keep an eye on, is like all the different ways this is going to be sort of moving forward. So the program itself is land council driven, and it's obviously sort of, we've got Jade and his cultural knowledge sort of holding that space for us. And then it's the collaboration with the university and research, actually looking in detail at what the decision-making impact, or what the impact is on this way, capital W, on decision-making and on environmental decision-making. So that's where the research part comes in. But it's definitely something that, that as a land council, we're very interested in broadening this, the reach of this.
No, but I really appreciate the way in which you articulated what I think I was trying to say. See, from an Aboriginal decision-making space, yeah, pre-contact guys, we had councils of elders. We didn't have chiefs. We didn't have kings and queens. We didn't have the same hierarchy that is reflective of the times that we live in or the places that we imagine into even around tribal peoples. Aboriginal Australia, in terms of its governance, was unique. 6 men, 6 women, both genders fully initiated, but representatives of particular stories and particular knowledges. We're trying to replicate this. This is where Catherine's going. We don't want to stack things. We don't want the same thinking or the same knowledges overemphasized over here or there. What you're looking for is a cross-section of knowledges to make up this circle. These participants, the people that are engaging in this process of learning. You want different decision-making bodies, decision-making individuals. What we'll learn through the program is that the lake and aspects of the lake also have autonomy. They also advocate for themselves, be they trees or waters, you know, be they the certain landscapes. So they also have a voice in this decision-making process that needs to be taken into consideration. And so I do really appreciate that, Kath, but it's a bit more straightforward, you know, not that, you know, stacking things can always, you know, benefit us as Aboriginal people, but in this instance, we're really exploring these decision-making processes. And what we want is a representation of different knowledges from different places and spaces. So thank you for clarifying that for me, Kath. How's it sitting with people? Is it making sense? Well, whoever's nodding, you can explain it to me. Because I don't know what I'm talking about. I keep telling you now, come on. What are you thinking? This is a conversation.
I'll jump in if you don't.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. I was about to pick on someone.
Yeah, I know my name says Lila Ship up there, but my name's actually Amanda Ship. I just don't know how to change the name from my daughter's name. But
That's
anyway,
right, Lila, we don't mind.
Technology, who knows? I work with Jess at council, so I'm sorry to stack the conversation with council people, but yeah, I'm another environmental officer at council, and we're at the very, very start of the coastal management program process for the remainder of the open coast. So now that the lake's got its amazing CMP, we're going to do one for the rest of the open coast. So we're just kicking that off in the new year. So this is really timely and really interesting for me, and it's going to be a big part of our conversation with community. We'll be, having the conversation from the start. So yeah, it's very exciting.
Hey, thanks for sharing that, Amanda. And is the work that you're doing limited to the LGA, or do you work beyond that?
No, it's pretty much the LGA. So what we're looking at, we're going to scope what the CMP will apply to, but at this point, it's from Windang to up to the top of the LGA. So up to
Helensburgh.
Yeah. So we'll obviously work with partner councils to collaborate, but really it's focused on Wollongong.
Okay, fantastic.
Jade, I have a question, if I may jump in.
Hey, Freya.
Hello, and thank you so much to Bronwyn as well, who's put a map in the chat showing the Wollongong Shell Harbour Divide. That's very helpful. But my question or comment was about the agency of the lake, and I was just wondering if you might be able to sort of talk a bit more about the role that might play in decision making.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, these things take time, but let's do our best to give a bit of a frame. You know, from an Aboriginal perspective, we have a mission in our lives to keep all things alive. And this mission is reliant and dependent upon the fact that for us, we believe that all things are living beings. Trees, the birds, the bees, the sky, the sunrise, all of it is understood and seen as a living entity. And I speak in terms of pre-contact, you know, because even me, like, you know, I'm a pretty big time Aborigine now. Come on, I'm just mucking around with this. But what I'm saying is, like, you know, I've grown up in this day and time. You know, I'm deeply influenced by the era that I'm living in, the construct and the values that I'm living in. And so for me, I get a privilege of insight and, you know, access to knowledges, etc., that help me see and appreciate that, you know, there was a time in this country where there was no other questioning around the fact that me as a human being, I would have been seen as much less important than I think I am. I am no more important than a tree. I'm no more important than a bird. I'm no more important than dirt. All living things are seen as equal from an Aboriginal perspective. Everything living seen as equal. And so when we speak about agency, it's who am I to impose my decision upon all of these things that this decision will impact upon without consulting. Because every decision to be made requires a conversation. And those conversations are had so that we can make the appropriate considerations. So if I'm going to put in a seawall, if I'm going to dredge a certain area, or if I'm going to cut down these trees, or, you know, do something with this salt marsh here, or if I'm going to create a little, like, I don't know, yacht club here, and I'm just throwing out shit. Don't take any of it seriously. I'm just trying to give us an insight and an imagination into some of the activities around the lake. And I'm going to make that decision without identifying with the impacts that it may have on these mangroves, this sort of coastal strip, the flow of the water, the way in which it moves and shit, right? If I'm not going to give agency to the environmental aspects, but I'm not speaking about them environmentally, I'm speaking about them as entities in their own right that have the absolute right to have a contribution to the decisions that's being made. Because I've imposed myself as a human being and taken away their equality in the decision-making process. So that for me is where the agency comes in, you know. But for me, it's really starting to imagine into this space. Like, what do you sense and feel when I say the lake? And now the lake is an entity of multiple relationships, and there's communities that are a part of that lake. There's habitats, and they have agency as a collective, but also as individuals, right? That particular one tree, but then the habitat through which it lives, you know, and it's communing with. And so it can be taken in a number of ways as a consultation. But when I say words like sovereignty, like, where does that sit? When I say things like stakeholdership, now where does that, like, we're thinking about decision making, right? What if I say something like personality? You know, where do these things sit? And so this is what we start to engage with relationally through this process of Ngayagang Yanba, moving through Maramo, moving with these respect, responsibility, reciprocity, regularity, routine, you know, moving through these frameworks, these knowledges that come from this country, moving through these. But like I said, not to say, oh, you know, like, see this one tree here does this, like, absolutely. All of that ecological knowledge that sits from an Aboriginal space, that's really cool and important too, but it's about us, like me, you. What's our relationship? What's my lived experiences? And how do I advocate for and with and why? And so that's where that little yarn there sits for me, Freya. I hope that sort of made sense. Like I said, these are things that we try to share over an extended period of time, but yeah, hopefully that makes some sense in this short time we have to share.
No, that was great. Thank you. And also thank you so much to all the speakers. They were great talks. I loved those photos, Rhonda. Oh, there's also some comments on the chat of people saying lots of thank yous and whatnot. So that's great. So this came in to say that as well.
Would you like to just take a moment to share, maybe just read some of those quickly for us? That'd be,
yeah. So we've just got,
might inspire a question.
yeah. There was, where was it? I just saw it. There's a really interesting one from Tillman early on talking about Oak Flat Sailing Club. There's a picture there at the Sailing Club that shows the lake with sandy beaches. So sort of a bit of that change over time thought. And we've just got various comments about the different perspectives and people just sort of really enjoying hearing about the different perspectives. Sorry, my mouse isn't working very well. Janet has put up a YouTube link to a nice story about the lake, which I haven't clicked on, but that sounds really interesting.
Thank you, Janet.
Yeah. And Lorna has mentioned that she wants to have a chat to you soon and given her a lot to reflect on.
Okay,
do you mind
fantastic.
if I just jump in a little bit, Joe, in response
Go for your life,
to
Michelle.
what you were just talking about? Because I think a lot of people in the room, in the virtual room, would have kind of a similar reaction to me to some of the provocations that you put forward around agency of the lake. Because if anyone has had a science background, science training, you are taught to completely remove that kind of personification of nature or thinking about nature in this way of putting, you know, personal attributes to it. And you very much, a lot of those ideas are really, they're really uncomfortable for people that have had a science background. I certainly, like every time I hear you talk about it, I just have this conflict come up between, you know, the way I've been trained, the way I've been taught, and these ideas. And that is exactly where we're going in this, like that discomfort, that challenge is exactly where we want to go with this program, because I think what underpins this entire project is we're searching for a different way. And we can't search for a different way if we're sitting in our comfort zone doing everything the same as we've always done. And we're not looking to chuck out all the science. We're not looking to say the way we've done it previously is completely wrong. But we're definitely looking to disrupt or create discomfort so that we can together work out what a different way looks like. We don't have the answers. This is a total experiment. So what we'll be doing through this process is working together with the decision makers, going through the process with the decision makers together as researchers, and co-developing a response to it, coming to the end of it and going, okay, what did we get out of that? What did we learn from that could inform the way we do our business in future? And it could be something really little in terms of how a committee manages itself, or it could be really big. So, and I think that's what's exciting about it. It is an experiment. We don't know the answers, but we're going to be going through quite an uncomfortable process together, and who knows where that'll take us.
Uncomfortable, but good food and coffee, like in company, you know.
And great
like,
company.
There's perks.
What learning is, ladies.
Andrew, that message you just sent to me directly, so you might want to paste it into the chat, or I can read it out if you like, or if you'd like to read it out.
Yeah, sorry, Michelle, I didn't realise. Yeah, I was just saying, Jade, thanks for your earlier insights. I was just sort of saying that one thing is someone who works in government, I think people, one of the biggest challenges they have is knowing how to relate to knowledge systems, knowing how to access them, knowing who to have a yarn and have a conversation with. And then I think what compounds that is that often our policy frameworks are hierarchical. So they're very structured. We have a process that we need to move through, and they're not relational. And I mean, so one thing that really stood out that you raised is that from a cultural perspective, cultural is in a sense relational. So everything is seen, which you said as equal. And I think that, I mean, that's a huge challenge is trying to work across that divide. And then I guess that goes to what you're saying, Michelle, as well, is that, you don't have the answers, but we can certainly, or you guys, through the work can certainly work towards improving the situation. So yeah, it was just a thanks,
no,
Jade,
it's beautiful, brother. I really appreciate that sharing. It's helping to sort of continue to generate an understanding of the space. And I think it's really helpful for all of us here today to really be able to acknowledge that we're coming from very different spaces. I sometimes use the word, we've got a real transactional space and a real relational space. and they can be really difficult at times to bring together. And I don't know that government space so great, you know. I don't sometimes know that university space so great, but I might know this space pretty good over here today. And so what we want to be doing is coming together, working collaboratively to find ways through. You know, we need these insights, Andrew, in these decision-making spaces. We need your intimacy of knowledge of these processes so that we can start to translate. And that goes for everybody, you know. We need to know that Jess is in the room to give us an imaginary line if required to, right? Where's the sandbars, sis, you know? It's all of these things. It's an acknowledgement that each and every one of us has a knowledge to contribute in the ways in which we can collectively identify solutions. This is what community is. And this lake, its centerpiece here, like it's beautiful. It takes care of us all in different ways that we sometimes don't realize, you know? We've got to support those that are in the space to be making decisions here. So thank you very much, Andrew. I've really appreciated your contributions today, brother.
It's the context as well, isn't it? That so this is a yarn that we often have around, particularly around Indigenous and cultural knowledges. The decontextualization of, and the removing it from the relationship, so that it just becomes a statement on a piece of paper, which doesn't make any sense because it's completely removed and it's isolated, and you're not looking at how it sort of marries and how its relationship with the knowledge holder or its relationship with other knowledges. So it's a different, very much a different way, and yeah, that's what makes it so exciting, I think.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kath. I think we might have time for one more comment. I really do appreciate all of you guys that have been able to stay. I know this is your lunchtime and, you know, everyone's got the busy worlds that they're living in and juggling. So, yeah, if anyone feels inspired or called or, you know, just want to have a quick yarn, this is your time.
Akdan would like to ask a question. So yeah, please go ahead, Akdan.
Thanks, Freya.
Perhaps it's coming on the chat.
Hello. Hi.
Hi there, Akdan.
Hi, everyone. My name is not Akdan. That's my son's name. I'm Indra. I'm a PhD student from Ankles.
Sorry, Indra.
Yeah, it's a nice topic that you guys. I'm just interested. The thing that interests me about your topic is how it can be a lesson learned for my country as well in terms of incorporating Indigenous knowledge to government decision-making process. It's just that I'm just gonna ask a question regarding that what Andrew was saying about hierarchical decision-making process and what you guys will be doing in terms of incorporating Indigenous knowledge. Are you guys going to look, for instance, things such as business interests or things such as elites, political elites, and how they affect that, the thing that you guys are trying to aim in relation to relational with, you know, I mean, Australia has done a lot of step forward in terms of reconciliation with the Aboriginal community, and my country also has some issues with Indigenous community. I'm just saying that this is very interesting, very interesting. Just how are you guys going to talk about things such as business interests, things such as political elites, and how that, you know, in a broader scope in terms of reconciliation.
It's a really it's a good space to be questioning into.
Yep.
I do also invite the rest of the panel, but initially from me, you know, our objective would be to elicit participants from every aspect of the ways in which the lake is being engaged with as a community. So that would be the ideal, right? So if there's business activity occurring, you know, recreational activities occurring, as you know, there's got to be a whole range of government inputs in this space, right? The ways in which we manage, say, water quality, or, you know, just manage the landscape, you know, or the waterscape in this space. So the ideal objective is that you would have a representative from all of those interest groups that would be able to collectively move through this educational space, and then thereafter contribute to the ways in which decisions would be made. So those individuals essentially become advocates for their knowledge space in the decision-making space, if that makes sense, right? So for me, reconciliation in Australia is a political agenda that doesn't necessarily translate or correlate to this decision-making process. You can say all the bullshit you want to say, brother. We've seen it day after day. We've heard it year after year. That's bullshit. We don't need it. What this is about is working collaboratively with our communities, Aboriginal, non-Aboriginal, whatever your heritage. If you have a relationship with the lake that has influence over decisions that can be made, then you're relevant. It's place-based. And it's not about adhering to government agendas. It's not about trying to make people feel good. It's about finding solutions that are in the best interest of the sustainability of the place. And from a blackfellow way of understanding, human beings are a part of a place. We're no more important than any of the other aspects of a place. But now I'll just share, open to the ladies that are part of our team to also, yeah.
I think it links back for me to the yarn we were having yesterday with Kathy Jade about the difference between who and what, like what you do isn't who you are. And that really is what, and your values, so the why. So this program, like everything Jade's involved with, really comes back down to who you are at the core, and that's where we find the same, you know, like you can leave the what you do, you know, the idea that you're a council employee, or that you're, you know, that you're an officer in this sort of respect, and we engage as individuals of the same community with different knowledges, and that all of that's equal, which is why so much of it's circle work, you know, not in terms of a ute, you know, out in the paddock, but for those from west of the Great Dividing Range, you'll get that. But the yeah, so much of it's in circle and just contributing equally. So the hierarchy doesn't exist in that space. I don't know if I contributed to it or just confused it, but anyway, I'll handball that over to somebody else.
Thank you, Kath. Look, it just has clicked over 2 o'clock, and Indra, I'm more than welcome to continue this conversation with you outside of this space, if that's something that would be helpful. But thank you for the question that you've asked. So guys, I want to just close the space and be respectful. Thank you so much for the time that you have given to listen to our sharing. Thank you for the contributions that you're making. Thank you for being on screen when you can be, and don't stress if you're not. Like, it just gives us all a bit more energy. So mad love to all of those that feel comfortable to be in that space with us too. Again, thank you for your questions. Thank you for the ways in which you're engaging in this series and this process. Mad love, mad respect, and we'll speak to you all soon. Take care, people.